In the heart of West Africa, where the sun paints the sand with burning strokes of gold, and the Niger River curls its way through land-rich kingdoms, there once lived a man whose name would echo across centuries. A king so wealthy that the world still struggles to measure the depth of his fortune. A ruler so powerful that his footsteps rewrote the destiny of nations. A man so mysterious that even legends bow when his story is told. His name was Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived. But wealth was not where his story began. No, it began much earlier, before the gold, before the power, before the pilgrimage that changed the world. It began in the ancient Mali Empire, a place where kingdoms rose like mountains, where trade flowed like endless rivers, and where the souls of kings were shaped by tradition, faith, and war. Long before Musa wore the crown, the lands of Mali pulsed with life. Merchants crossed deserts with salt and copper. Blacksmiths carved spears from iron that glowed as red as fire spirits. Griots, keepers of memory, sang the stories of mighty kings who carved empires from dust. The Mali Empire was strong. But greatness, true greatness, was waiting for a spark. That spark would come from tragedy. Before Musa, there was Abu Bakr II, a ruler with a heart consumed by curiosity. He believed the Atlantic Ocean hid secrets no African had ever touched. One day, he prepared an expedition. Not a small fleet, but hundreds of ships, filled with warriors, scholars, sailors, and supplies. When he returned, he spoke only one thing to Musa: the sea is endless. I must know what lies beyond. And so, he set out again. This time leaving Musa as his deputy. A temporary ruler, he said. But Abu Bakr too never returned. The ocean swallowed him, his ships, and his ambition. And so, Musa became emperor. When Musa ascended the throne, the world underestimated him. He was young, quiet, thoughtful. Not a man who craved attention or glory. But destiny does not ask permission. Musa accepted the crown with humility, knowing that he inherited a kingdom at a crossroads. Trade routes needed strengthening. Cities needed rebuilding. And faith, Islam, needed nurturing through education and justice. He vowed silently, "If I rule, I will rule with righteousness." And so began the rise of a legend. Under Musa, Mali flourished beyond imagination. Caravans crossed the Sahara under his protection. Gold mines dug deeper, pulling out wealth that glimmered like pieces of the sun. Timbuktu thrived as a center of learning. Scholars traveled thousands of miles to teach. Architects shaped cities from sand, stone, and spirit. Yet, for all his accomplishments, one decision would define him. A pilgrimage. A journey of faith and transformation. A trek that would shake the very foundations of the world economy. But long before Mansa Musa walked the earth, the land that would become his empire was shaped by centuries of struggle, migration, and war. West Africa was not quiet. It pulsed with the footsteps of kingdoms, rising, falling, rising again. And among those kingdoms, one stood destined for greatness: the Mali Empire. But to understand Mansa Musa, you must first understand the empire that carried him. The story of Mali begins with a prophecy spoken long before Musa's time. It was said that a mighty kingdom would be born from the bloodline of a disabled boy, a boy whom people believed would never walk, never fight, never rule. But destiny does not bend to human expectations. This boy was Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali, the man who defeated the oppressive sorcerer king Sumaro Kante, the man who united 12 kingdoms into one mighty empire. Sundiata laid the foundation. He built laws, created alliances, and forged a unity stronger than iron. By the time Musa came centuries later, Sundiata's legacy was still alive, woven into every village, every court, every battlefield. This was the empire Musa inherited. Not a dying kingdom, but a sleeping giant, waiting for a leader who would awaken its golden heartbeat. The Mali of Musa's time was a mosaic of ethnic groups: the Mandinka, proud warriors, and traders the Fulani, cattle herders and nomads the Songhai, river people with unmatched fishing skills the Tuareg, desert riders who ruled the sand's different cultures, yet unified under the crown. The empire stretched so far that it could take 3 months to ride from one end to the other. Mountains in the north, forests in the south, and in the middle, the lifeblood of Mali, the Niger River. Its waters fed farms, nourished cities, and carried merchants from village to village. Along its banks stood great cities: Niani, the royal capital; Gao, a center of trade; Gen, famous for its architecture; Timbuktu, the jewel of knowledge. These cities were not like European towns of the same era. They were larger, wealthier, more advanced, filled with scholars, traders, poets, and kings. Musa did not inherit a simple kingdom. He inherited a superpower. Mali controlled the greatest gold reserves the world had ever known. The empire sat directly on the Bambuk gold fields, the Bure mines, the Akan trade routes. Half of the world's gold market flowed through Mali. Caravans of camels, sometimes thousands in a single line, carried gold, salt, ivory, kola nuts, animal hides, cotton, leather, and copper across the Sahara. In return, Mali received silk from China, spices from Arabia, books from Egypt, weapons from North Africa. This trade fed the empire and expanded its power. Mali was a place where faith and tradition danced together. Musa's coronation took place in Niani, the capital of Mali. The air trembled with anticipation. Warriors lined the palace grounds, their spears gleaming under the sun. Griots sang songs of Sundiata Keita, the great founder of the empire. When Musa first assumed power, Mali was a vast empire, but one stretched thin by ambition and external threats. He faced desert raiders disrupting trade, internal rivalries among noble families, regions suffering from food shortages, a need to strengthen borders and protect caravans, growing pressure from neighboring kingdoms. Many believed Musa was too young, too calm, too soft-spoken to rule such a massive empire. But they underestimated him. Deep inside the quiet young ruler lived a mind sharpened by observation, patience, and discipline. He was not loud, but he was strategic. Not aggressive, but formidable. Not boastful, but unshakable. He began to rebuild Mali from the inside out. Once stability returned, Musa looked outward. The empire expanded under his leadership, peacefully in some regions, strategically in others. Through diplomacy, he strengthened alliances. Through trade, he extended Mali's influence. Through military strategy, he secured borders stretching thousands of kilometers. By the 5th year of Musa's reign, Mali was larger than ever before. Its cities gleamed. Its markets overflowed. Its scholars wrote books that traveled across North Africa and beyond. And yet, despite all this, Musa remained humble. The griots recorded one of his sayings: "A king is not measured by the weight of his crown, but by the weight he removes from his people." Niani, the royal capital, blossomed into one of Africa's most vibrant cities. The palace was an architectural marvel, not built for intimidation, but for beauty and dignity. Surrounding it stood workshops of leathercraft and ironworking, open-air markets where traders from distant lands exchanged goods, courtyards where griots recited the history of Mali, schools where children learned to read Arabic, and Mandinka mosques adorned with fine cloth and carved wood. Islam played a growing role in Mali. Mosques were thriving. Teachers guided children through the Quran. Traveling scholars offered knowledge from Egypt, Morocco, and the Arabian Peninsula. But Musa never rejected the ancient traditions of his people. He allowed Mandinka customs to flourish alongside Islamic teachings. This balance, this harmony, made Mali strong. It made the people united. And it made Musa beloved. By the 10th year of Musa's reign, trade was booming, cities were flourishing, knowledge was spreading, justice was strong, Mali was peaceful, and the king's reputation had begun to travel across continents. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa made the decision that would define him. He announced to the empire, "We journey to Mecca, not for glory, not for fame, but for faith." The caravan that left Mali was so enormous that griots struggled to count its numbers. Foreign historians later wrote about it with disbelief. The records describe 60,000 men, including soldiers, heralds, servants, and officials, of 12,000 royal attendants, all dressed in fine brocade and Persian silk, of 500 slaves, each carrying a gold staff, or 80 camels, each carrying 135 kilograms, 300 pounds, of pure gold, or entire convoys of horses, cattle, donkeys, and supplies of musicians, cooks, healers, scholars, and imams. It was not a caravan. It was a moving empire, a river of gold flowing slowly across the desert. The desert wind sparkled with dust from the golden loads. The earth trembled beneath the footsteps of tens of thousands. People who witnessed it said, it was as if the sun itself was traveling. In every village and town they passed through, Musa gave freely. He offered a gold dust to widows, a food to the poor, a camels to travelers, a clothing to children, a gifts to scholars, a alms to imams and teachers. He believed, a king's wealth means nothing if it does not lift others. As Mansa Musa's caravan entered Cairo in 1324, the entire city seemed to pause. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Children squeezed between adults for a glimpse. Imams murmured in astonishment. Scholars adjusted their robes in disbelief. Never, not under any sultan or foreign emperor, had Cairo seen such magnificence. The procession stretched as far as the eye could see, armored soldiers shimmering in polished iron, heralds announcing Musa's arrival, slaves carrying staffs of solid gold, camels draped in embroidered fabrics, servants wearing brocade from distant Persia, musicians playing rhythms that shook the streets. Then, at the center of this moving sea of wealth, rode Mansa Musa. He did not dress in excessive finery. He did not flaunt jewels or gold. He wore simple robes, clean, elegant, traditional, a sign of humility. But that only made the contrast more powerful, because everything around him outshone the sun. For months, Musa stayed in Cairo, preparing for the next leg of the pilgrimage. And during that time, he gave away so much gold that Cairo's economy trembled. He gifted gold to the poor, the traders, the scholars, the mosques, the royal court, caravan owners, gatekeepers, craftsmen, even beggars on the street. He spent lavishly in the markets, paying prices far above their value simply out of kindness. Gold flooded Cairo. So much gold entered circulation that its value plummeted. Inflation soared. The price of goods skyrocketed. Merchants struggled to adjust. And for 12 whole years, Egypt's economy was destabilized. Historians later wrote, it was the only time in recorded history that one man caused a regional economic collapse simply through generosity. Mansa Musa had not intended to cause harm. But his wealth was not normal wealth. It was wealth on a cosmic scale. Eventually, seeing the economic imbalance he had created, Musa performed a rare act of responsibility. On his journey back to Mali, he bought back large amounts of gold from Egyptian merchants, at higher prices than he had given. He attempted to reverse the damage. This gesture impressed the Sultan greatly. It showed that Musa was not careless, he was thoughtful, wise, and accountable. Al-Nazir Muhammad later called him a king of admirable character, unmatched generosity, and overwhelming wealth. After his return, Mansa Musa, who had seen the greatest cities of the Islamic world, Cairo, Medina, Mecca, and something inside him awakened. Now, he was determined to transform Mali into a beacon of learning, faith, culture, and trade, a shining jewel on the continent. And at the center of that dream was a single, legendary place, Timbuktu. Among the scholars Musa brought from Mecca was a man whose legacy would define West Africa forever. Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, the Andalusian architect, poet, scholar, and master craftsman. Al-Sahili was unlike anyone in Mali. He had seen the architecture of Granada, the minarets of Medina, the designs of Moroccan palaces. And when Musa invited him to build a new Mali, he accepted. Mansa Musa commissioned al-Sahili to build something timeless. Not just a mosque, but a symbol. A place of learning. A sanctuary for worship. A fortress of knowledge. The Jingareba Mosque. Built from mud bricks, desert limestone, timber beams, and the sweat of thousands of workers, it rose like a mountain of earth, strong, majestic, shining gold under the sun. The day it was completed, Mansa Musa stood before it and said, "This is not a mosque. This is a message." A message to the world that Mali had entered a golden age. But Musa didn't stop at one building. He expanded Sankor, a small mosque already known for teaching, turning it into a full academic institution. He invited scholars from Egypt, Morocco, Persia, Arabia, Spain, the Songhai region, the Fulani states. They brought books, thousands of books, until Timbuktu held one of the largest libraries in the world. Sankor University grew into a center of theology, a school of astronomy, a hub for mathematics, a home for law, literature, and medicine, a refuge for poets and philosophers. Students traveled from across Africa to learn at the feet of scholars. With learning came commerce. Timbuktu exploded into a global market. Caravans arrived by the hundreds, salt caravans from Tagaza, gold traders from Bambuk and Bure, manuscript sellers from Morocco, spice merchants from Arabia, cloth traders from Kano and Katsina, scholars bringing books worth more than gold. Yes, in Timbuktu, books were more valuable than gold. Musa issued laws to protect scholars and merchants. He built safe trade routes. He hired soldiers to patrol the desert paths. Timbuktu became unstoppable. As the years passed, Musa grew older, his hair streaked with grey, his gait slower, but his mind sharper than ever. He had ruled for decades. He had crossed deserts, seas, and mountains. He had given away mountains of gold. He had built cities, mosques, and libraries. He had welcomed scholars, poets, and travelers from across the globe. Yet his greatest pride was not in the gold he had spent or the palaces he had built. It was in the people of Mali, in the minds he had nurtured, in the faith he had strengthened. Under Musa, Mali had become the largest empire in West Africa, a hub of trade spanning the Sahara, a global center of learning, culture, and faith, a symbol of justice and stability, a destination known across continents. Timbuktu thrived. Sankore University flourished. Mosques sparkled. Markets overflowed. Caravans carried Mali's influence far and wide. Musa had not only enriched Mali in wealth, but he had elevated it to a golden age of civilization. When Mansa Musa passed away, the world mourned quietly, but the empire he had built sang loudly. The world may remember kings for battles won, or crowns worn, or riches amassed. But history remembers Mansa Musa for changing the world with gold, faith, and knowledge.